Well, last week the Prime Minister announced a 15% wage increase to childcare workers. Now that's fantastic, no doubt they deserve it, but can the country afford it? And why don't all of us who are suffering under the cost of living crisis get a pay rise? But a bigger question, and one that landed my next guest in a lot of trouble, is whether parents should be provided a real choice between going back to work or having the freedom and flexibility to care for young children at home. Senator Gerard Rennick raised this issue in a post on social media where he said the following, quote, "It helps fulfil a number of this is Labor's goals. 1, destroy the family unit. 2, brainwash children early with the woke mind virus. 3, put money into the coffers of United Voice, the union that childcare workers are pressured to join." This article, and Senator Rennick's referring to the article that he's commenting about in this tweet, he said this article is wrong. It's not Albanese government that's funding the $3.6 billion. It's the taxpayer. A 15% pay rise in the middle of an inflation crisis is just pouring fuel onto a bonfire as far as cost of living is concerned. I'm not against helping families make ends meet, but government support for children should go to the parents, not the unions or the rent seekers in the childcare industry. The further the government is away from the children, the better. That was a terrific quote. Now, I'm pleased to say that the Senator joins me now. Gerard, thanks so much for your time. The PM called you a cooker for that tweet. That's a slap in the face for parents who want an alternative to putting their kids in childcare 5 days a week, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, because this is a genuine issue that we do have a cost of living crisis, but we also have I think an educational crisis and a anxiety crisis amongst our children. And part of the reason for this, I believe, is the fact that we put them into institutionalised childcare way too early for way too long. Now, I want to be clear about what I refer to as childcare here. I'm not talking about your 5-day fortnight kindergartens when the children turn 4 and 5 and they might go to kindergarten for a couple of hours a day as they start to get older. That's great. I myself am a product of that. I'm talking about putting them into the childcare centres from, anything up from 6 in the morning till 6 at night, where they get to spend very little time with their parents. Now, the other thing is, many parents, and I actually had time off. I was fortunate enough to be in a financial position that I could afford it. But I stayed at home for a few years to help raise my children, and I'd go to mothers' groups every Tuesday. And every now and again you'd see a mother who's, this was her last visit to the mothers' group because she had to go back to work. Yeah. And you could see that in a majority of cases, the mothers weren't ready to go back to work. They didn't want to leave their children, but they were compelled to do it through financial constraints.
Yeah. Now, Gerard, just on that, I think one of the things that the Prime Minister and others, and I'll play a clip of Jason Clare in just a moment, but you said in that tweet that this is part of Labor's agenda to destroy the family unit. Now, I know you're using a little bit of hyperbole there, and I agree with your point, because what you just described about the young mums and the mothers' groups that you used to attend is very true. If you're putting kids back into childcare that early, that does have an impact on the family unit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I should put on the other side of the equation too. I've actually worked, I've had 15 employees, had 15 people working under me, many of them who were mothers who had to put their children in childcare. And I would often, they'd often call me or they'd get into work and then get a phone call half an hour later to say their child's too sick. You've got to come and pick your child up because we can't have them at childcare today. So then the mother would have to leave work, go home, pick up the child and stay at home. Because what we've now got the situation is too, there was this situation whereby, parents were dropping off sick children at childcare because they needed to go to work because they had to be at work that day, right? Well, if you're a stay-at-home parent and your child's sick, it doesn't matter because you're staying at home anyway. Yep. So, and the point is there is no flexibility in the financial support.
No, that's right. All the money goes to the people who put their kids in childcare. You really touched a raw nerve here. Not only did the Prime Minister call you a cooker, but they went after you in question time this week. Here's Jason Clare, the Education Minister.
Look at the rambling remarks of Senator Gerard Rennick. If you need reminding, remember what he said on the weekend? He said that childcare, that the work of early educators, quote unquote, destroys the family unit. Understand what that means, Mr. Speaker. That's not just a criticism of the work of the early educators in the gallery. That's effectively shaming every single mum in this country for wanting to go back to work when they have kids.
Now, Gerard, this is how cancel culture works, isn't it? I mean, you're making a valid point about choice in the way parents care for their children, and they do this to demonise you and make it look like you are impugning the good reputation of hard-working early childhood workers, you know, the staff who work in those childcare centres.
That's right. And they're also impugning that I'm having a crack at parents for having to go back to work. I understand why parents have to go back to work. But here's the rub, right? If you're a shift worker, so my mother was a nurse, and I'm sure plenty of listeners are nurses or policemen or hospitality workers or aged carers, you can't actually drop your child off in institutionalised childcare because you might have to work a late shift till, say, 12 o'clock at night. You need to be able to need financial support to, say, have a nanny come over for those hours after 6 o'clock to put the child to bed or whatever, right? So for shift workers, say for fly-in, fly-out workers where you've got say it's the dad who comes home week on, week off, why do you have to pay for childcare for the week you're at home? If you're a part-time worker and you're only working 3 hours a day, why do you have to pay for 12 hours?
Yeah.
Or if you want to be a stay-at-home mum, like the difference between getting a direct payment versus putting a child back in childcare is the difference between for many people staying at home and going back to work, or vice versa. You could pay your parents and that may help the parents. Instead of staying in the workforce, they might go, I'll look after my grandchildren, help them and keep them off the pension, for example, but just keep them employed a little bit longer.
Exactly, and this is where it's really unequal. And you've highlighted this in the social media post that we read out earlier. But Nick Cater, writing in The Australian this week, also raised this inequality issue in terms of the way taxpayers' money is spent on childcare. He asked this question in The Australian. He said, is it fair that working couples with one child in care received an average subsidy of $8,181 last year, while the 30% of mothers or fathers who chose to stay at home received nothing? Now, this is where, Labor, they want to throw the money at people who do the right thing and put their kids in care, but nothing goes to the parents who decide to look after the kids at home. This is their ideology at play, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that $8,000 is a little bit understated. I think it's more than that. But it's not only the $8,000 in childcare support they don't get, it's the fact that they forego an income, the income itself. And the other thing is, you'll see, and I know this again because I was a stay-at-home parent, stay-at-home parents are the ones that, help out at the tuck shop, help out with the fetes, organise the school fetes, go to the sport. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying some working parents don't do this. Plenty of working parents do it as well. But, it's in terms of the community engagement, a lot of stay-at-home parents will do more of the heavy lifting. I mean, it's a generalisation, so I don't want to say that it's a mutually exclusive thing. But yet again, we need that, and it's really, really important that we have parents who are actively engaged in the P&F at school. Because if you haven't got your parents going there, you need to be able to push back on the principal. If they're getting the woke mind virus forced onto them from their bureaucracy above them, the education department and the teachers union or whatever, you need to have a strong and vibrant P&F who can push back on the principal. So the principal then is pressured into going back and saying, no, this is not what the parents want.
Yeah, no, that's right. And the trouble is, too many parents are so busy trying to make ends meet. It really is a form of oppression that people don't have the choice. Both parents have got to work to try and service a mortgage and can't have that community engagement that you just talked about. Gerard, what would it take, to give parents the choice? What policy levers could be pulled? Is it family income splitting? Is it making sure that, any government subsidies, if they are to exist, follow the parents, don't go to the childcare centre? What sort of ideas have you got that could give parents that choice?
Well, the first one, Lyle, is the money goes directly, subject to welfare checks. So obviously you will have a case whereby you've got some parents who have drug addictions and stuff. They cannot get the money because they will waste the money on the wrong things. So let's just qualify that. But other than that, childcare parent payment just goes to the parents directly. It would need to be means tested, I guess, somewhere around 200,000 and above, with it, shading out after above 200,000. But you've got to remember one thing, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, is the Treasury don't take into account secondary impacts with a lot of tax cuts and things. So they assume that if you give someone or you cut taxes by $1, that dollar doesn't come back to the Treasury. And of course, that's not correct. For low income earners especially, every dollar they get, they spend out in the economy, and the money recycles through the economy and comes back to the Treasury via GST or corporate income tax or extra payroll tax or whatever. So that'd be the first thing. The other thing is I would be looking at income splitting to a degree as well.
Yep, very good.
Even though on income splitting, knows it is a bit contradictory to what, I would prefer a parent stay at home. So what you? Oh no, sorry, I've got it back to front. No, income splitting's fine. Sorry.
Yeah, of course it is.
Cool.
Yeah, because that's right.
I was confused. Yeah.
Yeah, the wage of the breadwinner then becomes the taxable income of the couple. And which would But again, everything you've said in this interview, and our time's really short. We've only got about 30 seconds left. But they've gone after you big time because you stood up for choice for families to not have to be in that. Having both parents in the workforce. This is the ideology that they're pursuing, and the response from the PM and Jason Clare and others has been just unhinged. How do you explain the level of vitriol that goes towards anyone like yourself who speaks up for families being able to have a parent at home looking after children?
Oh, that's the operandus modi of the left, is to name call. They are incapable. They are irrational, emotional people. Who should not be leading this country. They are incapable of having respectful and objective, rational debate.
Yep.
And the fact that, and I mean, it's not just with our views on childcare, it's, the word climate denier, anti-vaxxer, all of this stuff. They just engage in schoolyard bullying, and that is why they're not fit to govern the country.
Well, Gerard, it's a shame that this is the level of public debate, the name calling, but it clearly does show that whether they know it or not, their agenda is having an impact. It is destroying the family unit. Let's, call it for what it is, as you did. And I think it's such a shame that there's this blowback, and I think it's a shame, sadly, that your own party has taken you off the Senate ticket. We need voices like you in the Parliament, and we appreciate your courage and your time here today on ADH TV.
Thanks very much, Lyle. Have a great day.